Ryoma is a lonely, middle-aged man stuck in a dead-end job with terrible coworkers and an even worse boss. One morning, he wakes up to find himself in a strange place, sitting opposite three unfamiliar gods. They inform him that he has died and is now in heaven. However, Ryoma isn't surprised because he always knew the stress of his job was going to kill him eventually. He recalls all the times his boss broke beer bottles on his head and assumes that must have been what finally killed him. But the gods correct him, revealing that he actually died from accidentally falling off his bed. This revelation makes Ryoma crash out, as he never expected to die in such a pathetic way. The three beings before him are gods from another world, offering him a second chance of life in a new world, and in this new life he will be granted the ability to use all forms of magic. But the catch is that he must live in the body of a puny 8-year-old. After some minor discussion, Ryoma's body begins to glow in an ominous golden light, and he is instantly transported to the new world. Moments later, he wakes up lying in a forest, now in his tiny new body, and as he stands up and looks around, he fully accepts that he has been reincarnated. The gods have prepared a manual for his new life, and as he flips it open, he is shocked to see that all his stats lean toward brute strength. However, this likely means he retained most of his skills from his previous life. Ryoma notices a nearby tree, walks up to it, and decides to test his newfound strength. So with a single kick, he splits the tree in half, confirming that he definitely has some raw power. Just then, he spots a slime on the ground and immediately gets excited since it's his first time seeing one in real life. He attempts to tame it but has no luck, so he consults his magic manual, which provides instructions on how to use taming magic. Following the guide, he casts the spell, feeling magic flow through his body as a blue circle appears under the slime. The glowing pattern signifies that the slime has been successfully tamed and is now his servant. 3 years later, Ryoma wakes up in the house he built, surrounded by hundreds of slimes he has tamed over the years. After checking on his slimes, he takes a walk through the forest, where he spots a group of knights surrounding a wounded man. Unfortunately, they don't have enough magic left to heal him, so they prepare to take him back to the town. But before they can leave, Ryoma steps in and offers to help. The knights are unfamiliar with him, so the blonde one immediately draws their sword and demands to know who he is. As he eyes Ryoma carefully, he wonders what Kid is doing alone in such a vast forest. Ryoma assures them that he isn't a threat and that he has medicine they can use. So one of the female knights steps forward to examine the medicine, and after tasting it, she confirms its authenticity. With that reassurance, they feed it to the wounded man, who soon shows signs of recovery, proving that the potion is effective. After thanking Ryoma for his help, he suggests they rest at his home before continuing their journey the next day. The blonde leader agrees, and as they walk, two of the knights whisper among themselves, still puzzled about why a child like Ryoma is living in the forest. Suddenly, the knights draw their swords as a horde of slimes appears out of nowhere, but before they attack, Ryoma steps in front of the creatures, calmly explaining that they are his servants and pose no threat. Once the confusion clears, the knights lower their weapons and apologize for the misunderstanding before continuing on their way. Eventually, they arrive at what appears to be a giant rock, seemingly a dead end. However, Ryoma uses his barrier magic to reveal his hidden home, leaving the knights visibly impressed. Inside, they set the wounded man down to rest, but the knights soon notice something strange about the house because there is only enough furniture for one person, meaning Ryoma must live alone. Ryoma walks in with a crate full of potions, telling them to take as much as they want since he makes them by hand. The knights are shocked that a child like him can produce potions, so they question him about who he is and where he's from. Realizing he can't avoid the question much longer, Ryoma sits down with their leader to properly introduce himself. After sharing his name, the leader introduces himself as Reinhardt Jamil, one of the most famous dukes in the area. The moment Ryoma realizes this, he quickly bows out of respect, and after that, the other knights then introduce themselves more casually, thanking him for his assistance. With introductions out of the way, Reinhardt, still suspicious, asks how Ryoma learned magic, potion making, and why he's living alone in the forest. Not wanting to reveal the truth, Ryoma fabricates a story, claiming that his grandparents taught him these skills but passed away 3 years ago. Before their death, they had instructed him to go to a village, but since he's an outsider, the villagers don't accept him. To express their gratitude, the knights give Ryoma a crystal ball that can detect criminals. When he places his hand on it, the ball confirms that he is not a criminal, which reassures the knights. However, one of them checks his stats and is surprised to see that he has no combat abilities whatsoever, which makes Ryoma sigh in embarrassment before getting up to prepare dinner. Reinhardt, concerned about leaving Ryoma alone in the forest, consults his team. He decides to return home and discuss with his father to see if anything can be done about Ryoma's situation. The next morning, the knights prepare to depart for their kingdom. As they walk away, Ryoma feels a pang of guilt for lying about how he got here. 2 weeks later, after finishing a head count of his slimes, Ryoma lays on the ground to rest, but suddenly, he hears a familiar voice and quickly stands up to see the knights returning for another visit, and as they approach, Ryoma's eyes land on a beautiful girl walking alongside them. Once they arrive, Ryoma is greeted by Reinbach, Reinhardt's father, along with Reinhardt's wife, Elise, and their daughter, Ellie Aria. They thank him for saving Reinhardt and his comrades 2 weeks ago. Ryoma bows in response and apologizes for not having any snacks to offer, but Reinbach brushes it off, reminding him that they arrived unannounced. As Reinbach looks around, he is surprised by the sheer number of slimes Ryoma has, since the number has increased drastically since the knight's last visit, making them wonder how they all fit in his home. To demonstrate, Ryoma merges them into one giant slime, leaving everyone astonished. And when he begins explaining the details of slime merging, he notices their stunned expressions. Ellie steps forward impressed, saying that no one in their kingdom has ever achieved this, so Ryoma clarifies that instead of forming a contract with 100 slimes at once, he contracted each one separately before merging them. This revelation amazes them, as he has solved a mystery that has puzzled tamers for years. Elise suggests he register with the Tamers Guild and present his giant slime, but before they discuss it further, Ryoma invites them inside. Once inside, Reinhardt presents Ryoma with a gold-coated clock as a token of gratitude. Ryoma accepts it, but soon realizes they didn't come all this way just to deliver a gift. Ellie Aria speaks up, explaining that her family comes from a long line of tamers, and she wants Ryoma's help in taming her first slime. However, she doesn't know where to find one. Ryoma pulls out a map and points to a water source where slimes often gather, making it the best place to start. Even so, Ellie Aria is unfamiliar with the different types of slimes, as she asks Ryoma to teach her everything he knows. An hour later, Ryoma demonstrates how he uses slimes to wash clothes, swirling them in a way that mimics a washing machine. When he pulls out the fabric, it's spotless, which shocks everyone because goblin grime is known to be one of the toughest stains, yet Ryoma's slimes clean it effortlessly. Inspired, Ellie Aria becomes determined to tame a slime that can evolve into an even better cleaner. She asks Ryoma to teach her how, but he hesitates because he finds the explanation a little awkward to share with a lady. Instead, he gathers the male knights and explains it to them, and their expressions confirm that Ryoma made the right choice. However, Hughes takes a more direct approach, walking over to Ellie Aria and the maids and bluntly telling them they need to take a bath and use their sweat-filled water as bait. The girls are immediately offended, so without hesitation, they give him the slap of his life. Ellie Aria wants to tame a slime, but the method is more embarrassing than she expected, so Ryoma suggests she ask one of her guards to do it, but Ellie Aria decides to handle it herself, determined to accomplish things without relying on others. She spends a few minutes in the bathtub, focused on her goal. The next day, she carefully carries a bowl of her bathwater and bids Ryoma farewell, hoping to capture her first slime. That evening, she returns beaming with excitement, proudly showing everyone the small slime she has just tamed. Inside the house, Ryoma watches as Ellie Aria gently pets her slime, which brings back memories of his own first slime. It was sluggish but precious to him, so he kept it and named it Tabuchi after an old co-worker who reminded him of it. Elise then asks what he plans to do next. Ryoma admits he isn't sure whether to stay or move elsewhere. She suggests he travel with them, but he hesitates, realizing he hasn't left the forest in a long time. Sensing his uncertainty, Ellie Aria shares that this is her first real journey as well, and though it may come with hardships, it will also bring unforgettable experiences. Her words make Ryoma think about the world beyond the forest, and after some reflection, he agrees to join them, much to their delight. Since all of his knowledge of this world comes from the gods, he believes traveling with them will help him understand common sense. That night, Ryoma packs everything he can into his item box and visits the statue of the gods, informing them of his journey. He promises that if he doesn't return, he'll build another statue elsewhere. Then before departing, he seals the cave entrance with magic to prevent intruders. Meanwhile, Reinbach opens a space portal, summoning a carriage with horses. With that, their journey begins. For the next few days, they travel by day and rest in tents at night, making the trip quite comfortable for Ryoma. On the fourth day, they find themselves caught in an unusually heavy rainstorm. Suddenly, the carriage shakes violently and comes to an abrupt stop, causing Ellie Aria to fall into Ryoma's arms, making her blush right as the driver informs Reinhardt that there's a problem. Stepping outside, Reinhardt finds that a massive landslide has blocked the road. Taking the detour would add 3 more days to their journey, so he suggests using earth magic to clear it. Ryoma, still inside the carriage, sees the landslide and decides to help. He puts on his raincoat and steps outside, forming a magical barrier over himself and Reinhardt to shield them from the rain. Instead of using regular earth magic, he proposes a more efficient method and decides to demonstrate. Using his create block technique, he generates several stone blocks, which his slimes carefully place to reinforce the road. Within a short time, the path is cleared and the storm subsides. Reinhardt is impressed, thanking Ryoma for his quick work. Elise rushes over in excitement and gives Ryoma a tight hug, pressing him into her chest. He barely has time to react before he starts suffocating, and Elise quickly lets go, realizing her mistake. Though exhausted, Ryoma feels a deep sense of satisfaction in helping others. For the next 3 days, their journey continues smoothly until they finally arrive at the city of Gimel. Shortly after settling into his room, Ryoma looks out the window, acknowledging that one of Reinhardt's main reasons for coming here is to assess which mines to keep open and which ones to close. Later that day, he goes to the church with Reinhardt and the others because he needs to obtain an item known as a status board, which displays a person's stats. While at the church, the attendant directs him and gives instructions on how to proceed, but as soon as Ryoma places the status board down and accesses the crystal ball, he is instantly transported to heaven, where he sees the 3 gods who sent him to this world. Seeing them, Ryoma's face lights up with excitement, but that excitement quickly fades as he starts to wonder if this means he has died again. However, the gods explain that he is not dead, but rather they simply pulled his mind over to their side for a while and that he will return to where he was once their conversation ends. Ryoma then recalls that the gods had previously told him he would not be able to communicate with them unless he trained the oracle skill, but since he never trained that skill, he wonders how he is able to see them now. The gods explain that because Ryoma has lived a monastic lifestyle for the past 3 years, they decided to grant him the oracle skill, allowing him to communicate with them, though only briefly. The female god then tells Ryoma that it was expected he would meet the dukal family, but he does not understand what she means. She goes on to explain that one of the previous people transferred from Earth had actually married an ancestor of the Jamil family. The gods remember her quite well as a very kind girl who had always wanted to be an animal tamer, so when she was transferred to this world, her wish was to gain a skill that allowed her to tame animals. The same woman later established the Taming school of magic and was even granted the title of a noble. Since then, the gods have been individually blessing members of the Jamil family. They also mention that Eliaria seems to have inherited her ancestors' blood very strongly, meaning she is likely to become an excellent tamer, which makes Ryoma very happy because he knows how hard she works. However, the gods also inform Ryoma that there is another transferee on that side of the family, since they always bring at least one person whenever they take magic from Earth. This transferee was a stereotypical otaku who wished for strong magical powers and used them to become unstoppable in combat. Fortunately, he was too timid to go out of his way to commit any bad deeds. Even though the gods were the ones who granted him his powers, they were really worried until the day he died. Compared to him, they believe Ryoma is much calmer since he makes his own decisions and follows the right rules, so they feel they could not have wished for a better transferee than him. Ryoma's time with the gods comes to an end, and as he starts to glow with an ominous golden aura, he tells them he will return to the church soon to talk with them again. After that, he is transported back to his world. Once he returns to his body, the attendant instructs him to check his status board and mentions that it is customary to hide everything except his name and age, since the rest is private information. After she leaves, Ryoma takes a look at his status board and sees that he has been granted everyday skills and combat skills. He also notices that the gods have given him a title, Beloved Child of the Gods. When he steps outside, he is greeted by Eliaria, who is happy that everything went smoothly. Shortly after, Reinbach approaches him and offers some advice. He has noticed that Ryoma's abilities are far beyond what is normal for someone his age, so he suggests that Ryoma hide his strength from outsiders to avoid being exploited. He also advises him to join a guild and increase his rank in order to improve his standing, to which Ryoma readily agrees. When Ryoma casually mentions that he has a magic capacity of 198,000, Eliaria is slightly surprised because not only does he have such a high capacity, but he can also use magic properly, though Ryoma does not see anything unusual about this. The butler senses his confusion and explains that having a high magic capacity usually comes with side effects, as people with naturally high capacities often struggle to control their magic and learn new spells. This revelation makes Eliaria feel a bit down because she is around the same age as Ryoma, but cannot use magic as well as he can. Ryoma is shocked when he learns that her magic capacity is actually 200,000. However, he simply tells her that if she spends her free time learning magic, she should be able to improve on her own. Reinbach and the others hear his idea and find it quite brilliant, so Ryoma even offers to teach her whenever she wants. As Eliaria holds his hand in appreciation, Ryoma acknowledges that it actually feels good to be valued. The next day, Ryoma and the group travel by carriage until they arrive at the Tamer's Guild, where Ryoma is supposed to get registered. However, considering that he has always trained slimes, it would be difficult for him to raise his rank, so Reinbach decides to take him to the Adventurers Guild instead, hoping he can increase his rank there. When Ryoma enters the test area, he meets his supervisor, who has a very stern look on his face, but still explains that this will be a test of compatibility. For the first test, Ryoma is given 5 arrows and instructed to shoot at 5 stationary targets without missing. As soon as the test begins, he quickly picks up each arrow and strikes the target's dead center, passing the test with ease. Reinhardt watches in amazement, as he always knew Ryoma was skilled, but he did not realize he was this good. The next test involves shooting arrows at moving targets. Once the test starts, Ryoma once again strikes every single target without missing. After he completes the test, a supervisor suddenly throws a knife at him in a sneak attack, but Ryoma catches it, throws it back, and then summons a staff preparing to deal a final blow. However, the supervisor quickly begs him to stop, declaring that the test is over. Impressed, he compliments Ryoma on his performance before introducing himself as Worgen, the guild master of the Adventurers Guild. Since Ryoma has passed the test, he is taken to Worgen's office, where Worgen slides him his official guild card, which he will use to accept missions. Ryoma will start at rank G and work his way up, but if he continues at this pace, Worgen believes he will have no trouble rising through the ranks. With that said, he suggests Ryoma check the guild board to see what jobs are available for him. However, he is only allowed to accept jobs within his rank unless he forms a party with promising members, in which case he might be able to take on a higher-ranked mission. Ryoma goes over to the mission board and sees a variety of tasks, but the one he feels best suited for as a beginner is cleaning a civilian's house, as he believes he can simply use his slimes to do the job. The next day, he packs up his slimes and prepares to head out while Reinhardt and his family wish him farewell and good luck. Shortly after, he arrives at the house and knocks on the door. When it opens, he is surprised to see a cat beastkin standing before him since this is his first time encountering one. Just then, a thick, foul stench fills the air, clearly coming from inside the house. The beastkin, with desperation in her eyes, grabs Ryoma's hands and begs him to clean it. Ryoma's task is to clean Mia's house, which is filled with trash. The house is built on unstable land, and over time, a heap of garbage collapsed into the basement. Eventually, the buildup became so massive that no one was willing to take on the job. Despite that, Ryoma is confident that he can handle it with the help of his slimes. He starts by sending his scavenger slimes to consume all the trash in the dump. Once that's done, he moves to the basement and uses his mist wash technique to clean the walls. Finally, he employs his create block technique to produce bricks and reinforce the structure. And with that, the house is fully cleaned. When Mia arrives to inspect the results, she stares in amazement, and the transformation is so overwhelming that she starts to cry. Overcome with gratitude, she thanks Ryoma for his work. Now that the task is complete, Ryoma hands her the form to sign, confirming the job's completion. Mia is so impressed with his work that she promises to increase his pay when he collects it from the guild. Having successfully completed his first job, Ryoma feels a sense of comfort knowing he can make a living in this world. With that reassurance, he heads back to the guild to report his success. Upon arriving, the receptionist is shocked to learn that he managed to clean Mia's basement in just half a day and all on his own. She hands him his reward, which is even higher than expected due to Mia's increased payment. Just then, Ryoma hears Worgen calling out to him, so they take a seat, and Worgen expresses his admiration for how quickly Ryoma completed the job. Since Mia is a well-known adventurer, Worgen was already aware of her problem and just how much trash had accumulated. Curious, he asks Ryoma how he managed to finish it so fast, and in response, Ryoma explains that it was thanks to his slimes. Hearing this, Worgen informs him of another job that requires his skills, though Ryoma already knows it involves cleaning the community toilets since he saw it on the mission board. Worgen explains that due to recent budget cuts, there is no one available to handle the cleaning. After listening to the details, Ryoma agrees to take on the job, and Worgen assures him that the pay will be good. Later that day, Ryoma informs Reinhardt and his family about the job offer, and upon hearing this, Reinhardt begins to suspect possible embezzlement because the governor's office had reported that the costs remain unchanged. He instructs his butler, Sebas, to investigate the matter, while thanking Ryoma for bringing this to his attention. Reinhardt notes that they might uncover a crime because of him. The next day, Ryoma and his slimes set out to clean the community toilets. Once inside, he orders his scavenger slimes to consume all the filth, then uses his mist wash technique to clean the walls before finally disinfecting the area with lightning magic. However, this is only one bathroom, meaning there are still 29 more to go. Before proceeding, Ryoma conducts a monster appraisal on his slimes and is shocked to discover that they have all developed resistance to miasma poison. This can only mean that miasma has been accumulating in the toilets. Alarmed, he rushes back to the Adventurers Guild to report it, only to find Reinhardt and the others already there gathering information from Worgen. They all enter Worgen's office, and when Ryoma mentions the presence of miasma in the community toilets, Elise and Ellie area immediately rush to check on him. Knowing how dangerous miasma can be, they are deeply concerned, But this reaction causes Ryoma to blush since it's the first time anyone has ever worried about him. Despite the risk, Ryoma insists on dealing with the miasma before it gets out of control. Worgen is surprised that he is still willing to proceed with the job even after learning about the danger. However, the others oppose the idea, fearing it's too risky for him. To reassure them, Ryoma displays his status screen, which confirms his resistance to the poisonous gas. With this proof, he argues that no one is better suited for the task than him and his slimes. The next day, Ryoma returns to the community toilets to resume cleaning, but this time, Worgen has stationed a few renowned adventurers outside to ensure no one enters. With everything in place, Ryoma and his slimes begin working again. As his slimes multiply, their numbers exceed 1,000, allowing them to clean each bathroom at record speed. By nightfall, Mia and the guards watch Ryoma's efforts and suggest that he take a break, but he refuses, insisting that he wants to finish the job as quickly as possible. The number of scavenger slimes increases from 1,000 to 3,000, so Ryoma divides them into groups to improve efficiency even further. At the start of the third day, Ryoma finally steps out of the building and announces that he has completed the cleaning. Then everyone outside congratulates him, and they share a moment of laughter and accomplishment. Later that day, Ryoma stretches, feeling exhausted since this was the first time in a long while that he had worked past midnight. As he reflects, memories of his past life start to come back to him. Working past midnight had been a normal occurrence, but back then, he lived such an empty and monotonous existence that he had simply grown used to it without noticing. Now he returns home and is surprised to find Reinhardt and his family waiting for him. The fact that they stayed up just to see him fills Ryoma with emotion, and he begins to cry, overwhelmed by how lonely his past life was. Alice approaches him and embraces him, telling him that they now consider him part of their family. Later that night, after bidding them goodnight, Ryoma lays in bed, feeling truly grateful that he came to this world. The next day, the Reinhardt family wakes up very early to prepare a breakfast fit for a king, and when Ryoma wakes up, he is surprised to see that they have gone to such lengths just to make him a meal. The main reason for this breakfast is for Eliaria to ask Ryoma if he will teach her magic, and luckily for her, Ryoma agrees. Hubers also suggests that Ryoma should learn something from them, and since he is not very skilled in attack magic, Kemal offers to teach him. Later that day, they all head into a valley, where Ryoma begins teaching Eliaria. However, Eliaria mostly knows only fire and ice magic, which Ryoma considers the hardest ones to control. Still, he comes up with an idea and uses bubbly water magic to blow bubbles into the air, making Eliaria stare in amazement. When it is her turn to try, she successfully creates bubbles on her first attempt, but they don't last in the air as long as Ryoma's. Ryoma advises her to imagine something like a sticky liquid, and when she follows his instructions, the bubbles last much longer than before. Eliaria is thrilled to see herself improving just by playing with magic, so she excitedly holds Ryoma's hand. Meanwhile, Kemal calls Ryoma over to teach him attack magic as promised. He starts by demonstrating a fire arrow spell, launching it into a boulder, and Ryoma replicates it perfectly on his first attempt. Over the next few hours, Ryoma learns various attack and defense spells until he has mastered everything Kemal planned to teach him for the day. Just then, Reinbach arrives and announces that he will be teaching Ryoma space magic. Ryoma already has some experience with space magic, which he proves by teleporting around them. Since he already knows the basics, Reinbach declares that he is ready to move on to the intermediate level. He explains that all space magic functions the same way, so in order to teleport a longer distance, Ryoma simply needs to form a strong mental image of his destination. Ryoma focuses for a few moments and successfully teleports to a distant tree. Reinbach teleports after him and introduces the next spell, Dimensional Home. Unlike a regular item box, the Dimensional Home contains air, allowing Ryoma to store living things like his slimes inside. Ryoma practices the spell until sunset, and when he finally casts it successfully, Hughes confirms it, making Ryoma beam with joy. Since it is getting late, they all decide to head home. The next day, they set off for the abandoned Gimel mine to train Eliaria in monster combat. Shortly after arriving, they enter the mine for her training, while Reinhardt's group heads to another part of the mine to assess how badly the shafts are infested with monsters. As Ryoma's group ventures deeper into the cave, they spot a praying mantis and signal Eliaria to fight it as part of her training. She starts by launching an ice arrow, but she misses, giving the mantis a chance to get closer. Right before it reaches her, she fires another ice arrow and takes it down, turning back to the others to celebrate her victory. As they move deeper into the cave, they encounter 4 monsters at once. Hughes and Kemal wonder if that might be too much for Ryoma to handle, but he reassures them that he can manage. He charges straight at the monsters, using a body-hardening technique on himself before swiftly taking them all down with his daggers. Just as Hughes suggests they head back, Eliaria spots a metal slime in the distance. She traps it with her ice magic, picks it up, and brings it back to the group. Ryoma suggests that she form a contract with it immediately, but she surprises him by offering it to him as a gift for teaching her magic. Ryoma is delighted by her gesture. After that, they call it a day and step outside the cave. As Ryoma admires his new metal slime, he notices some red soil on the ground and wonders if he can extract iron from it. Gathering the red sand into one spot, he uses alchemy magic to extract the iron and form a bar so polished that Eliaria's reflection appears on its surface. Reinbach and the others stand by, visibly impressed. Reinbach then takes Ryoma to a trading company, where one of the traders examines the iron bar along with some other items Ryoma has crafted. The trader confirms their authenticity and agrees to sell them, but Ryoma requests that his identity as the creator remain a secret, fearing it might put him in danger. Reinhardt then suggests that all the profits go to Ryoma since he is the one making the goods, as they themselves do not need the money. Ryoma finds their kindness overwhelming and gives them a look of deep appreciation. The next day, Worgen calls a meeting with Ryoma and the other adventurers. He informs them that their new mission is to clear the Gimel mineshaft of all the small monsters lurking inside. The monsters found in the mineshafts include cave bats, small rats, and other monsters. Although these creatures aren't particularly dangerous, they tend to appear in large hordes, so Worgen advises everyone to stay alert and not let their guard down. The adventurers then head into the menshafts, splitting into two teams to cover more ground. Ryoma is the only one on his team who knows how to use attack magic, so they agree that he will take care of aerial threats like the cave bats while the others handle the rest. Not long after, Ryoma's group encounters a trio of cave monsters, but they easily defeat them without breaking a sweat. Moving forward, they sense a large horde of cave bats hanging from the ceiling in the shaft ahead. Cave bats are tricky to deal with since they move in swarms, but Ryoma comes up with a plan to take them all out at once. First, he covers the area with a sound barrier, and he uses his sound bomb technique to send a powerful sound wave into the shaft ahead. By the time they reach the location, they see that the sound wave has knocked all the bats onto the ground, allowing Ryoma to command his slimes to devour them. The hunt has been going smoothly so far, so they decide to head out around midday for a break. As soon as they step outside, Worgen and his assistant greet them with serious expressions. They inform Ryoma's team that the other group has stumbled upon a goblin village deep inside the mines, consisting of over 500 goblins. Some of the adventurers even got injured during the encounter. Since the goblin village poses a significant threat, they decide to launch an operation to eliminate them. To prevent any goblins from escaping, adventurers are stationed at different mine shafts to block all possible exits. The operation begins smoothly, with the adventurers working together to eliminate the first wave of goblins. However, they quickly realize that there are far more goblins than expected. Seeing the overwhelming numbers, Ryoma summons all 3,000 of his slimes from his dimensional home and charges into battle. He prepares to use Sound Bomb again, so he creates a protective sound barrier around his allies before unleashing the attack. The moment the explosion goes off, the goblins stagger, visibly weakened. Seizing the opportunity, Ryoma commands his slimes to attack, and as he predicted, they overwhelm the goblins completely. Just when everyone thinks the battle is over, a giant goblin emerges from the depths, accompanied by several hobgoblins. Ryoma immediately calls upon all 3,000 slimes who swarm the enemies at once. The sheer number of slime is enough to take them down, and soon after, they are seen feasting on the remains of the defeated goblins. With the job finally done, the adventurers prepare to leave, but before they do, Ryoma notices how filthy everyone's clothes have gotten. Without hesitation, he brings out his clean slimes and uses them to remove the goblin grime, which surprises the others since goblin filth is notoriously difficult to wash off. Later that night, as they ride the carriage back home, the other adventurers praise Ryoma for his outstanding performance on the battlefield. At some point, he steps outside to sit with Jeff, who is driving the carriage, and their conversation makes Ryoma feel deeply grateful that he was brought into this world. However, he feels even more thankful that he met Reinhardt and his family because he knows that without them, he never would have left the forest. As he reflects on all the kindness they have shown him, a thought crosses his mind, wondering whether he'd been relying on them too much. This realization weighs on him, and by the time they arrive at Reinhardt's home, he has already made up his mind. With a serious expression, he reports the day's events and then announces his decision. He will separate from them so he can learn to support himself fully. Ryoma knows that everything he has achieved so far, including becoming an adventurer, is all thanks to Reinhardt and the others. However, he feels like he's getting too comfortable, so he wants to take a step back from them. He doesn't plan to leave forever, but he wants to spend some time on his own and grow. Alice doesn't like the idea, but Reinhardt and his father say they had already expected this. Having raised many children like him, they believe it's only natural. Reinbach tells Ryoma he can go, but only under 3 conditions. He must always update them about anything going on through letters, visit whenever he gets the chance, and never hesitate to ask them for help. Ryoma agrees to all of them, and Elise is relieved to hear it. At the same time, Reinhardt's family is planning to head to town to capture some lemur birds since they are in season. Reinhardt believes this would be a great opportunity for Ryoma, so he suggests that he tags along, and Ryoma agrees. After that, Ryoma explains that by living on his own, he means staying in town as an adventurer, while also starting the laundry business he has always wanted. Just then, the other adventurers and maids who had been eavesdropping enter the room. They mention that Ryoma's laundry idea would make him a lot of money because many adventurers simply throw away their gear when they can't remove goblin grime. The next day, Ryoma and Eliaria visit Serge at the trading company to discuss how to start the business. Serge watches as Ryoma's slime effortlessly cleans goblin grime, and an excited look appears on his face. He tells Ryoma that this idea is going to make him a fortune, then suggests he head to the Merchant Guild to register. Shortly after, they arrive at the Merchant Guild, where they meet the guild master, who turns out to be just an old lady. Ryoma explains his idea using the cleaning slimes, and she finds it fascinating, because she officially signs him up, trusting that he will make a lot of money. After that, she shows them a map indicating where his store will be. An hour later, they arrive at the location and find it to be in a very strategic area, not too far from the Adventurers Guild, making it an ideal business spot. However, the building itself is run down, so they will need to clean it up and renovate it before opening the shop. Seeing this, Serge offers to lend Ryoma some of his employees to help with management duties, believing that Ryoma isn't quite cut out for running a business yet since he's still just a kid. Ryoma agrees without hesitation and even says he'll purchase all the necessary appliances from Serge. They shake hands, marking the official start of their agreement. Ryoma decides to invite everyone who has helped him so far as a way of showing his appreciation. Eliaria and some of the maids assist him in preparing food for the opening party. Just then, two pink-haired twins walk into the store, expressing their shock that an 11-year-old has managed to find a way to clean off goblin grime. However, Serge quickly tells them that age is irrelevant and that they shouldn't judge a person by their appearance. With that, he introduces them as Ryoma's apprentices, Callum and Carla. Despite being young, they both serve as the sub-manager and deputy sub-manager at one of Serge's branches. Ryoma then takes them inside and gives them instructions on how to treat customers when they walk in. After that, he demonstrates how the slimes clean and iron clothes, which leaves them quite impressed. Shortly after, the welcome party begins, and it's time for Ryoma to give a speech. This makes him recall a moment from his previous life when he had to speak at the office only for no one to listen to him. However, this time is different. He delivers a good speech, thanking everyone for their support and raises his glass in celebration. After that, everyone eats and enjoys themselves, which makes Ryoma happy because it means the party is a success. Once the party is over, he calls Callum and Carla over to commend them for their hard work. However, judging by their behavior, he assumes they wouldn't want to continue working for him. To his surprise, they tell him they have thought it over and actually want to stay. At first, they had doubts about working under him, but after seeing how confident people are in him, they believe they can learn a lot. They had always been tense around Ryoma because they thought he was a noble, but after learning that he isn't, they both relax noticeably. The next day marks the official opening of his laundry shop, which he names the Bamboo Forest. However, Ryoma has doubts about whether he will get customers. After Carla and Callum arrive, he heads to the Adventurers Guild to inform them that his shop is officially open. To his surprise, by the time he gets there, the adventurers already know about his grand opening because Mia had put up a giant poster announcing it. The adventurers tell him that they will visit his shop as soon as they finish their work for the day. In the meantime, Ryoma decides to take on a simple adventurer job, herb gathering, so he heads to the mine shafts and finds no monsters there. Then, after collecting the herbs, he returns to the guild, delivers them, and receives his payment. When he gets back to his shop, he is shocked to see a long line of people waiting outside. He teleports inside and is greeted by the neighbors, who tell him they've been eagerly waiting for his shop to open ever since they heard about his service's ability to remove goblin grime. Overcome with emotion, Ryoma tears up with joy and immediately instructs his assistants to attend to the customers while he takes care of the laundry. A few hours later, while talking with Callum and Carla, he realizes they haven't had the chance to rest, so he informs them that he will be hiring more staff to ease the workload. After that, he visits the Reinhardt family and excitedly tells them about his business's success, but they aren't particularly surprised since they had already expected it. That night, as Ryoma lies in bed, he reflects on how miserable his old life was. He never truly felt comfortable back then, but now, even though he's exhausted, he still feels at peace. The next day, the Merchant Guild Master gathers a group of people she believes would be the perfect staff for Ryoma's laundry business. Shortly after, Ryoma stands before all the candidates and announces that he is the owner of the laundry company, which surprises them since he is just an 11-year-old kid. He informs them that he works with slimes, so they are expected to treat the slimes as colleagues. However, he also gives them the option to leave if they are uncomfortable working with slimes or taking orders from a child. About 90% of the candidates walk out, unwilling to work under a kid. This leaves only two people, an interesting-looking man and woman named Fei and Ling, who still want the job. As they stand up, Ryoma notices that the man has a broken leg, but he doesn't think it will be a major issue since the healing slime should be able to take care of it. Looking closer, he also spots weapons on them, so they admit they were once assassins, but have left that life behind to pursue honest work. They explain that after fighting in a war, they lost their homeland and were forced to relocate to this town, choosing to stay undercover. Despite all this, Ryoma still decides to hire them because the guild master is already aware of their past and doesn't see them as a threat. Fei and Ling are surprised that Ryoma still wants to hire them even after learning they used to be assassins. After that, he introduces them to Carla and Callum, informing them that they are their new colleagues. They exchange greetings and Ling heads to the employee room, where she sees the slimes diligently doing the laundry. She introduces herself, telling them she is one of their new colleagues. With Fei and Ling now part of the team, Ryoma is confident they will be able to manage the evening rush and maintain a steady flow of customers. The next day, Ryoma wants to ensure Fei is comfortable working in the shop, so he sits him down and uses one of his healing slimes to mend his broken leg. Fei proves that it worked by standing up, jumping around, and moving freely. His daughter rushes over to him, overwhelmed with gratitude. With Fei's leg healed, Ryoma trusts that they will be able to work at their full potential. He then shows Fei and Ling their new rooms, which they find beautiful since they can't even remember the last time they slept on a proper bed. With everything in place, the next 2 business days go smoothly. The following day, another large wave of customers arrives and all his employees work hard. To show his appreciation, Ryoma makes them pizza and other dishes as snacks for lunch, allowing them to take breaks in between their shifts. With that, they manage to get through the day efficiently, with everyone working full-time. However, now that business is growing in popularity, Ryoma believes it's best to hire more people. He decides to bring in 2 more employees along with a cook to prepare meals for the staff as part of employee welfare, which shocks his employees since they have never experienced such treatment anywhere else. With that in mind, Ryoma heads to the Merchant Guild and informs the guild master of his plan to hire more people. She considers it a great idea and assures him she will find candidates who don't mind working for him and the slimes. Later that day, the guild master introduces 4 new employees, Fina, Maria, Jane, and Selma. Judging by their attitude and the way they carry themselves, Ryoma accepts them, as they have no issues working with him or the slimes. A week has now passed since the shop opened and both customers and employees seem happy. Now that he has more staff, Ryoma realizes he no longer has to be at the shop all the time, so he decides to take on more quests at the Adventurers Guild in the meantime. The next day, Serge arranges a meeting with Ryoma to inform him about another business opportunity. He wants Ryoma to deliver and supply large quantities of waterproof fabric due to the upcoming outbreak season. Understanding the demand, Ryoma agrees to produce more as soon as possible. The following day, Ryoma informs Eliaria that he will be heading to the mines to make the waterproof fabric. She immediately asks if she can come along because she believes it would be the perfect place to practice her violin. However, Ryoma is confused about why she would go all the way there just to play music. She explains that Linor birds will soon be arriving at the lake and playing music is essential to taming them. If they like the melody, it becomes easier to gain their trust. With that settled, she begins practicing while telling Ryoma to act as if she isn't there. Ryoma then spends the next few hours preparing the fabric, and once the only step left is drying, he decides to uphold his promise. Using his rock molding technique, he creates a doll replica of Eliaria, which she finds absolutely beautiful. A few hours later, he meets up with the Reinhardt family and presents them with dolls he made of all of them. They are impressed by his craftsmanship, making Ryoma feel satisfied that he could bring a smile to their faces. The next day, he checks in at the shop and sees that everything is running smoothly, so he returns to the mines to continue producing waterproof fabric. He finishes the next batch, and while waiting for them to dry, he decides to engage the slimes in combat training. He lets the smaller slimes practice against each other while he personally goes one-on-one with the larger scavenger slime. As they fight, he notices that its defensive movements have improved significantly, proving that this training is quite effective. After the session, Ryoma turns his attention to one of the slimes he has been feeding iron for a while. Upon closer inspection, he realizes that it has undergone a transformation. Using his monster appraisal skill, he learns that it has evolved into an iron slime because it has only been consuming iron. This makes him realize that if he feeds slimes various metals, he may eventually obtain a metal slime. A few hours later, Ryoma returns to the shop and is shocked to discover that sales have tripled compared to the previous day. Now that he has more employees, they have been able to work together efficiently and satisfy all the customers. Suddenly, Ryoma shivers as he realizes that he hasn't even considered giving his employees holidays. He flashes back to his previous life, recalling how much he was exploited at his old job. Keeping that in mind, he announces that the shop will close once a week so everyone can have a proper break. His employees are overjoyed because they have never worked at a place that values their well-being like this. Ryoma is determined to provide them with the best working conditions to ensure they perform at their best. The next day, Ryoma heads to the Adventurers Guild, where the receptionist informs him that an adventurer party outside town has put up a rare slime for sale. This offer immediately piques his interest, so he heads over to a bar on the outskirts of town. Inside, he finds a group of men sitting together and drinking, and he assumes they are the ones selling the slime. Approaching them calmly, he begins discussing the slimes, but one of the adventurers, who is clearly drunk, takes offense. Misinterpreting Ryoma's words, he grabs him by the collar, thinking he has come to mock them for failing to sell the slime. However, as he pulls Ryoma, he suddenly falls to the ground and starts crying out of frustration. After that commotion, Ryoma speaks with some of the more reasonable members of the group. He explains that he is there to purchase the slimes they couldn't sell, since he collects and studies them. They allow him to examine the slimes, and when he looks inside the pot, he is surprised to see a slime that looks like blood, something he has never encountered before. Intrigued, he offers to pay extra for it, which delights the adventurers. After completing the transaction, he leaves and heads to the Grimmel Mines, where he forms a binding contract with the new slime. Once the contract is established, the slime slithers into the body of a dead rat and drains all its blood, making Ryoma realize that this could be one of its abilities. Meanwhile, the gods who brought Ryoma to this world continue to watch over him. Seeing how happy he has become and how much respect he shows to everyone, including the slimes, they conclude that they made the right decision in bringing him here. The next day, Elieria invites Ryoma to join her while she takes her magic lessons. Elise, Reinbach, and Reinhardt are present to teach her a technique known as the shared sensation technique, which allows her to share information, such as whether she is in danger, with her familiar. However, instead of using slimes for today's lesson, Elise brings some crew birds because she believes they would be more effective for sharing sensations. Both Ryoma and Elieria quickly form a connection with the birds. Elise instructs Ryoma to picture a mental image of being able to see through the bird's eyes, and after a few moments he realizes he can see himself, though the experience makes him feel nauseous. Elise and the others are surprised that he managed to pull it off, and Reinhardt explains that the nausea is something every taming magic user experiences. He advises Ryoma to close his eyes to get a clearer vision of things. Following his advice, Ryoma is now able to observe his surroundings through the crew bird without feeling disoriented. Afterward, they all sit down as Reinbach, Reinhardt, and Elise share details about the types of monsters they are capable of taming. Reinbach starts by explaining that he can tame any form of scaled monsters, though he cannot maintain many familiars at once. Reinhardt, on the other hand, can tame any four-legged animal, but he is unable to form a contract with any other types of creatures. Elise is considered the strongest tamer among them, which she proves by revealing her giant white wolf, a divine beast known as a Fenrir. At the same time, she has tamed over 120 monsters, primarily specializing in wolf-type creatures. Reinhardt has always been a step behind her in taming magic because he dedicated most of his time to practicing his sword skills. However, the strongest tamer among them is Reinbach, as he has less than 20 familiars, yet all of them are dragons. They are so powerful that he only summons them in times of true havoc. As Ryoma listens to all of this, he realizes just how incredible the people around him are. Over the next few days, Ryoma continues practicing taming magic with Elieria, while also producing and distributing waterproof fabrics to Surge. Eventually, the Grell Frog outbreak begins, and Ryoma holds a meeting with the other adventurers to discuss how they can make the most money hunting down the frogs. They figure that they will need a good outfit similar to the one Ryoma used when cleaning the public toilets, so he simply suggests that they visit the trading company to get some. The Grell Frog outbreak also means that the lemur birds will be flying through, and Ryoma recalls that they can only be tamed through music. Wanting to take advantage of this, he spends most of the night practicing his guitar skills so that he will be able to tame the birds when they arrive. The next day, Ryoma and the Reinhardt family begin their journey through the woods, heading toward the lake where the lemur birds are expected to pass. Along the way, Ryoma runs into the adventurer party that had sold him the blood slime. They talk for a while and thank Ryoma for the advice he gave them about making money during the Grell outbreak season. Their conversation soon comes to an end, and Ryoma hurries to catch up with the others. When he arrives, he is surprised to see the birds flying gracefully across the lake, and as he looks around, he notices adventurers gathering all the frogs from the water. A few moments later, a man attempts to tame the birds by playing an instrument, but his playing is so awful that the birds immediately reject him. Taking offense, he draws his sword and tries to tame them by force, but one of the birds retaliates by using wind magic to attack him. Fortunately, Ryoma intervenes just in time, blocking the attack with a wall. Suddenly, an agonizingly loud sound fills the air, forcing everyone to cover their ears in pain. However, Ryoma is unaffected for some reason, so he quickly tracks the source of the noise to one of the birds. Acting fast, he uses a round magic chamber to contain the sound, after which the bird flies away. Reinbach then explains that the bird that attacked them is part of a very dangerous species, one that can use dark magic in addition to wind magic. It is also known for instilling fear and hallucinations in people, and just by looking at the other adventurers, it is clear that they are already affected. Ryoma, on the other hand, has the skill of mental resistance, which likely explains why he was immune to the sound. However, even with that advantage, he realizes that he still has to be careful, as he had not even noticed the bird's attack coming. They spend the next few hours waiting for the lemur birds to return, but unfortunately they don't, so it's finally time for them to head home. Elieria looks sad because this is the moment where they part ways, and Ryoma is aware of this but doesn't know how to respond because of how awkward it feels. Just as the silence stretches, Elise steps in and offers them both some comforting words. Hughes, on the other hand, teases Ryoma by urging him to go in for a goodbye kiss, which makes both him and Elieria nervous, but Ryoma quickly calms his nerves by delivering a punch straight in the balls. Their attention quickly shifts as they notice the lemur birds returning. Seeing this, Ryoma decides to take a step back because he fears the leader of the lemur birds might be cautious of him. Then, out of nowhere, Elieria steps forward with her violin in hand, confidently assuring everyone that she'll be able to tame them. She starts playing a beautiful melody, and the soothing tune calms the birds so much that they accept her song and approach her for taming. She successfully forms a contract with 9 of them, which brings a smile to her face. Ryoma then takes out his guitar and begins to play. Although the guitar isn't an instrument known in this world, it still manages to soothe the birds, and as they come over to him, he successfully forms a contract as well. Elieria then appraises one of the rare-looking birds she tamed and discovers that it's actually a rare breed of lemur bird. That night, a huge banquet is held both as a celebration of Elieria taming the lemur birds and as a farewell party for Ryoma. A couple of hours later, Ryoma and Elieria sit together in his room, both awkwardly blushing. Elieria feels quite sad because Ryoma will now be living near the mines while she will be going to school and staying in the dormitories. However, what worries her the most is the fact that she hasn't really made any friends other than Ryoma, as most people are afraid of her magical abilities. She opens up about how she once accidentally froze someone, which led to people in town becoming scared of her and avoiding her ever since. Ryoma listens and doesn't think she should blame herself. He reassures her that he isn't afraid of her because he knows she wouldn't do something like that on purpose, which makes her smile. Elieria then presents him with a gift in a small box. As Ryoma looks inside, she explains that it's the necklace she received from her mother on her 10th birthday. At first, Ryoma refuses to accept it, knowing how precious it is to her, but Elieria insists, saying that it's normal for friends to exchange gifts before parting. With that in mind, Ryoma gives her 2 of his most precious slimes as a parting gift. Just like that, his final night with Elieria comes to an end. The next day, the Reinhardt family escorts Ryoma to the travel station where he will be departing. They all say their farewells, wishing him a better life ahead before leaving him alone with Elieria to say their goodbyes. They both agree to meet again in 3 years, by which time Elieria hopes to have excelled in her magical abilities. Before she leaves, they shake hands, agreeing that this isn't a goodbye but a see you later.